A rifle shot cracked through the dawn air as Willow Foster clutched her sobbing 4-year-old daughter to her chest. The stagecoach they'd been riding in now lying broken and abandoned on the dusty trail outside Silveridge, Wyoming Territory, 1878. Blood trickled down her forehead where she'd struck it during the robbery, but it was the fresh graves of the driver and shotgun guard hastily buried by the other fleeing passengers that truly terrified her. She was alone now, miles from town with nothing but a carpetbag, her daughter Lily, and the crushing weight of her late husband's debts driving her forward. "Hush now, sweetie," Willow whispered, wiping tears from her daughter's dirt-smudged face. "We need to keep walking. Town can't be too far now." The merciless summer sun climbed higher as they trudged along the rutted wagon trail. Willow's blue calico dress was soaked through with sweat, her blonde hair escaping its pins to stick to her neck. At 26, the last 5 years had aged her beyond her years, first with her husband Thomas's drinking and gambling, then his death from consumption, and finally the revelation of debts that had forced her to sell everything to seek work in Wyoming. "Mama, my feet hurt," Lily whimpered, her small face red and blotchy from crying. "I know, sweetheart. Let's rest a minute." Willow led them to a small outcropping of rocks, offering scant shade. She removed their shared canteen, allowing Lily a small sip before taking one herself. The water was warm and tasted of tin, but it was all they had. The distant sound of hoofbeats made her blood run cold. After the robbery, every approaching stranger meant potential danger. She quickly pulled Lily behind the rocks, pressing a finger to her lips. "Quiet now," she breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. The hoofbeats grew louder. From their hiding spot, Willow could see a lone rider approaching, tall in the saddle atop a powerful chestnut gelding. He rode slowly, seemingly in no hurry, his broad-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun. Lily squirmed in her grasp, a fresh bout of crying starting. "I want to go home." "Shh, please, Lily," Willow begged, but it was too late. The rider had heard, his head turning toward their hiding place. "Hello there," the man called, his voice carrying across the distance. "Anyone needin' assistance?" Willow remained silent, pulling Lily tighter. The man dismounted, tying his horse to a scrub brush before approaching their location with slow, measured steps. "Madam, I heard a child. Are you folks all right?" He was close now, maybe 20 feet away. Willow could see him clearly, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair visible beneath his hat. He wore simple clothes, faded blue shirt, worn denim pants, leather vest, and dusty boots with silver spurs that clinked softly as he walked. "Please go away," Willow called, her voice shaking. "We don't have anything worth taking." The man stopped. "I'm not looking to take anything, madam. Name's Preston Easton. I run the Lazy Ranch, about 10 miles east of here." He raised his empty hands. "Just offering help if you need it." Lily's crying intensified, great hiccuping sobs that tore at Willow's heart. The child was exhausted, hungry, and frightened. "Your little one sounds mighty upset," the man said, his voice gentler. "I've got fresh water and some jerky in my saddlebag if you'd allow me to share it." Something in his tone, a genuine concern without pity, made Willow hesitate. She'd learned the hard way that men rarely offered something for nothing, but they were desperate. The town was still miles away, and Lily couldn't walk much farther in this heat. "You can leave it there and step back," she suggested, gesturing to a spot several feet away. To her surprise, the man Preston nodded agreeably. "Fair enough." He returned to his horse, retrieved a canteen and small bundle, and placed them where she'd indicated before backing away. Willow emerged cautiously, Lily clinging to her skirts. She kept her eyes on the stranger as she reached for the offerings. "Stagecoach robbery?" he asked, noticing the dried blood on her temple. Willow nodded stiffly. "This morning. 6 miles back. Hendrick's gang, most likely. They've been hitting the Silveridge line for months now." His blue eyes narrowed. "Anyone hurt?" the driver and guard. They didn't make it. Her voice cracked slightly. The other passengers buried them quick, then left with a passing freight wagon heading north. There wasn't room for us. Preston removed his hat, revealing a full head of dark hair with slight curls at the nape of his neck. He wasn't what she'd call handsome in the conventional way. His nose had been broken at some point, and weather had carved lines around his eyes, but there was something steady about him. "Madam, Silveridge is still 8 miles off. That's a far piece with a little one in this heat. I'd be happy to give you both a ride to town." Lily had quieted somewhat after drinking from the fresh canteen, but at Preston's words, she burst into renewed tears, clinging to her mother. "No, Mama. No strange man," she cried, burying her face in Willow's skirt. Preston studied the frightened child for a moment, then did something unexpected. He knelt in the dirt, bringing himself to Lily's eye level, and spoke in a soft voice that seemed incongruous coming from such a large man. "Hello there, little lady. You've had quite a scary day, haven't you?" His tone was gentle, like someone talking to a spooked colt. "My name's Preston." "What's yours?" Lily peeked out from behind her mother's skirts, but didn't answer. "You know," he continued, "my horse over there is named Copper, and he's the gentlest horse in Wyoming territory. He loves carrying little girls almost as much as he loves sugar cubes." He pulled a small cloth from his pocket. "I just happen to have 2 sugar cubes right here. Think Copper might like one? Maybe you could give it to him." Lily looked up at her mother uncertainly. Willow was equally uncertain, but something about the cowboy's manner had disarmed her slightly. He wasn't leering or making demands. He was simply kneeling in the dirt, patiently waiting for a frightened child to trust him. "It's all right if you don't want to," Preston said, still addressing Lily. "But I promise you and your mama will be safe with me. Sheriff Colton in Silveridge is my friend, and he'd be mighty angry if I didn't help a lady and her little girl." "Her name is Lily," Willow found herself saying. "I'm Willow Foster." Preston smiled, and the expression transformed his weathered face. "Pleased to meet you properly, Mrs. Foster. Miss Lily." He tipped an imaginary hat toward the little girl, which surprisingly drew a tiny giggle. "Can I see the horse?" Lily asked in a small voice. "Lily, I don't know," Willow began, but Preston interrupted gently. "Mrs. Foster, I understand your caution. I have a younger sister with 2 little ones myself. How about this? I'll lead Copper over here, but stay on the other side of him. That way, you're between me and your daughter at all times." The thoughtfulness of the suggestion caught Willow off guard. This man seemed to understand her fears without her having to explain them. "All right," she conceded. True to his word, Preston led the chestnut gelding over and positioned himself so Willow stood between him and Lily. The horse snuffled at Lily's hair, making her giggle again. "Can I give him the sugar now?" she asked, looking up at her mother. Willow nodded, and Preston handed her one of the sugar cubes. Lily held it flat on her palm as Preston had shown her, squealing with delight when the horse's velvety lips tickled her hand. "Mrs. Foster," Preston said quietly while Lily was distracted with the horse, "I don't mean to pry, but you mentioned the stagecoach robbery. Were you headed to Silveridge for a particular reason?" Willow hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "My husband passed last winter. He left significant debts. I had to sell our home in St. Louis. I have an offer to work as a seamstress for Mrs. Larson's dress shop in Silveridge." Preston nodded. "Esther Larson is a good woman. Fair employer." "You know her?" "Small town," he explained with a slight smile. "Everyone knows everyone. Listen, my offer stands. I can take you both to town, or, if you'd prefer, my ranch is closer. My sister Martha lives there with me and her children. You could rest up, have a proper meal, and I could bring you to town tomorrow." Willow studied him, searching for any hint of deception. All she saw was open sincerity in his blue eyes. "Why would you do that for strangers?" she asked. Preston shrugged. Out here, helping folks in need isn't charity, it's survival. Next time, might be me needing the help. It was a simple philosophy, but Willow sensed it ran deep with him. She looked at Lily, who was now stroking Kappa's nose with wonder in her eyes. We'd be grateful for a ride to town, Mr. Easton. I need to report to Mrs. Larson as soon as possible. She's expecting me today. Call me Preston, please. He nodded. To town it is, then. Getting both of them onto the horse proved simpler than Willow had feared. Preston showed surprising dexterity in situating Lily in front of Willow, who sat sideways on the saddle while he walked alongside, leading Copper by the reins. It was slow going, but Preston maintained a steady pace, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing stories that had Lily giggling despite her earlier fears. See that ridge there? He said, pointing to a rock formation in the distance. Local Shoshones say it looks like a sleeping buffalo. Can you see it, Lily? The little girl squinted, then nodded enthusiastically. Yes, I see it. Willow found herself relaxing incrementally as they traveled. Preston made no inappropriate comments, kept a respectful distance, and seemed genuinely interested in ensuring their comfort. When they stopped to rest in the shade of a large cottonwood, he shared his lunch, simple but filling biscuits, jerky, and dried apples. May I ask where you learned to speak to children that way? Willow asked as Lily explored the base of the tree, searching for interesting rocks. Preston took a drink from his canteen before answering. My sister's husband was killed at Shiloh. She came west with her boys after, and they were damaged by what they'd seen. Took a lot of patience to get them talking again. His expression grew distant. Children carry hurts differently than adults. Sometimes they just need to know someone's willing to listen at their level. The casual mention of war reminded Willow that this man, despite his gentleness with Lily, had likely seen his share of violence. You fought in the war? He nodded. Union cavalry. Came west after it ended. Couldn't stomach going back to Pennsylvania. Too many ghosts. He seemed surprised by his own candor and quickly changed the subject. We should get moving if we want to reach town before dark. By late afternoon, the buildings of Silveridge appeared on the horizon, a sprawling collection of wooden structures with a few brick buildings marking the main street. Preston helped them dismount at the edge of town. Mrs. Larson's shop is just down the main street, past the general store, he said, pointing. Would you like me to accompany you? Willow straightened her wrinkled dress, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. No, thank you. You've done more than enough. Mama, I'm tired, Lily complained, rubbing her eyes. Preston reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small wooden horse, crudely carved but recognizable. Here, Miss Lily. Something to remember Copper by. The child's eyes widened as she accepted the gift. Thank you, Mr. Preston. He tipped his hat. My pleasure, little lady. To Willow, he said, Mrs. Foster, if you need anything during your stay in Silveridge, don't hesitate to ask for me or my sister Martha. The Lazy E is known roundabouts. Thank you, Mr. Easton, for everything. He nodded, mounted his horse, and with a final tip of his hat, rode off toward the livery stable. Willow watched him go, a strange mixture of gratitude and something else she couldn't quite name swirling in her chest. Then, taking Lily's hand, she headed toward Mrs. Larson's shop, uncertain what reception awaited them after their delayed arrival. Mrs. Esther Larson proved to be exactly as Preston had described, fair but firm. The older woman, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun, listened to Willow's explanation of the robbery with appropriate concern, but quickly moved on to practical matters. Well, you're here now, and that's what counts, she said briskly. I've arranged a room for you above the shop. It's small but clean. You'll start tomorrow morning at 7 sharp. The wedding season is upon us, and I've more orders than hands to fill them. The room was indeed small, a single bed, a cot that would serve for Lily, a washstand, and a small table with a single chair. But after their harrowing journey, It felt like luxury to Willow. Mrs. Larson provided them with a simple supper of bread, cheese, and cold chicken before leaving them to settle in. That night, as Lily slept deeply on her cot, Willow stood by the window, looking out at the unfamiliar town that would now be their home. Her thoughts drifted to Preston Easton, his unexpected kindness, the gentle way he'd spoken to Lily, the respect he'd shown to her. Men like that were rare in her experience. Her late husband had started courting her sweetly enough, but the facade had quickly dropped after their marriage. She pushed the thoughts away. She was here to work, to rebuild a life for herself and Lily. Nothing more. The following weeks established a routine. Willow worked long hours at the dress shop, her skilled fingers quickly proving their worth. Mrs. Larson increased her wages after the first week, impressed by her attention to detail. Lily spent her days either quietly playing in a corner of the shop or, when Mrs. Larson's niece Abigail was available, joining other children for informal lessons. Silveridge was growing rapidly, situated as it was near both mining operations and cattle country. The town bustled with activity: cowboys, miners, merchants, and increasing numbers of families putting down roots. Willow kept to herself, focusing on her work and Lily, still wary of strangers despite their generally welcoming attitudes. She saw Preston occasionally in town. He would tip his hat politely, ask after their welfare, but never imposed. Sometimes he brought small gifts for Lily: a ribbon for her hair, a piece of rock candy from the general store. Once, he delivered a package of fine fabric remnants that he said his sister thought might be useful for doll clothes. "Martha's always collecting scraps for her boys' toy soldiers," he explained with a crooked smile. Thought Lily might enjoy these. His thoughtfulness both touched and confused Willow. She wasn't accustomed to kindness without ulterior motives. 6 weeks after their arrival, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the saloon next to Mrs. Larson's shop. The blaze spread quickly, engulfing several buildings, including the dress shop, before the bucket brigade could contain it. Willow and Mrs. Larson escaped with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a few prized possessions. The town rallied, offering temporary shelter to those displaced. Mrs. Larson went to stay with her brother's family outside town, but there was no room for Willow and Lily. They spent an uncomfortable night on pallets in the church along with several others who'd lost their homes. The next morning, as Willow stood in the street staring at the blackened ruins of the shop and with it, her newfound security, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Mrs. Foster." She turned to find Preston Easton, his expression concerned. He'd clearly ridden hard to get to town, likely after hearing news of the fire. "Are you and Lily all right?" he asked. "We weren't harmed," she answered, her voice hollow. "But everything's gone. Mrs. Larson's shop, our room, my job." She trailed off, the enormity of their situation hitting her anew. Preston removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. "Mrs. Foster, Willow, I'd like to make an offer, and I ask that you hear me out before refusing." She nodded warily. "My sister Martha has been looking for help with the household and the children. The ranch is growing, and there's more work than she can manage alone. It would be a position with fair wages, room and board for you and Lily." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It would be strictly proper. You'd have your own quarters in the main house, and Martha would be there at all times." Willow's pride warred with practicality. She had almost no money saved yet, nowhere to go, and Lily to consider. "Why would you do this?" she asked, the same question she'd posed during their first meeting. Preston looked at her directly. "Because I've come to care about what happens to you and Lily. Nothing improper intended, just. I'd like to help if you'll allow it." There was sincerity in his blue eyes that made her throat tighten. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. Martha truly needs the help, and you need work. It's a fair exchange." She considered his offer. The Lazy Ranch would offer safety and stability for Lily, something Willow had been desperately trying to provide since Thomas's death. And if she was honest with herself, There was something about Preston's steady presence that had begun to fill the emptiness inside her. "I'd need to speak with your sister first," she said finally. Relief flooded his features. "Of course. She's at the general store now, purchasing supplies. I can introduce you." Martha Easton proved to be a whirlwind of energy, a petite woman with the same dark hair and blue eyes as her brother, though hers sparkled with more open humor. She had 2 boys, 10 and 8, who bounced around the store with barely contained energy while she inspected fabric. "Preston's told me about you," Martha said after introductions were made. "I'm sorry about the fire. Terrible business." She studied Willow with a frankness that was somehow not offensive. "I could use a woman's help at the ranch. The boys are growing like weeds, always needing mending, and between the garden, preserving, and keeping the house, I'm run ragged. Your little girl would have playmates too." "Mrs. Larson might rebuild," Willow said hesitantly. "I wouldn't want to abandon her." "Esther's getting on in years," Martha replied. "Word is she's taking this as a sign to retire. Her niece Abigail will likely open a smaller operation once things settle." She touched Willow's arm lightly. "The offer stands regardless. Think on it overnight." In the end, there wasn't much to think about. Mrs. Larson confirmed the next morning that she would not be rebuilding. With tears in her eyes, she embraced Willow. "You go on to the Easton place," she urged. "Preston's a good man, one of the best in these parts. And Martha's salt of the earth. They'll treat you and Lily right." 2 days later, Willow and Lily climbed into Preston's wagon for the journey to the Lazy. Lily, excited by the prospect of playmates and horses, chattered happily from her place between Willow and Preston. Willow remained quiet, still uncertain if she'd made the right decision. The Lazy Ranch sprawled across a verdant valley, protected on 3 sides by rolling hills. The main house was larger than Willow had expected, a 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around it. Several outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands completed the compound. Everything spoke of care and prosperity, without ostentation. "It's beautiful," Willow said, genuinely impressed. Preston's face showed pride as he helped them down from the wagon. "Started with just 50 acres and a dozen head of cattle after the war. Been building it ever since." Martha welcomed them warmly, showing Willow to a pleasant bedroom at the rear of the house. Lily would share with Martha's youngest boy initially, though Preston mentioned plans to add another room come spring. "The boys can double up," he explained. "They've been after me to build them a bunkhouse like the hands have." Life at the ranch quickly fell into a rhythm. Willow helped Martha with household management, cooking, and gardening. Her sewing skills proved invaluable, not just for the family, but for making repairs to gear and creating items the ranch hands needed. Lily thrived with the freedom of country living, following Martha's boys Jacob and Samuel on their adventures around the property. Preston maintained a respectful distance, often away from the main house while overseeing ranch operations. But at supper each evening, he would entertain them all with stories from his day or tales from his travels. Willow found herself looking forward to these times, drawn to his deep voice and the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. As autumn approached, bringing golden hues to the cottonwoods along the creek, Willow realized she'd found more than safety at the Lazy. She'd found contentment. The ranch had become home in a way no place had since her childhood. Martha had become a friend and confidant. And Preston had become something she didn't dare name, even to herself. On a crisp October evening, Willow sat on the porch, enjoying a rare moment of solitude as she mended one of Samuel's shirts. Martha had taken all 3 children to visit a neighboring ranch where a new foal had been born. The ranch hands were occupied with moving cattle to winter pastures, and the house was blissfully quiet. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her look up. Preston rode in, dismounting with the easy grace she'd come to admire. He removed his hat as he climbed the porch steps. "Evening, Willow," Enjoying the peace. She smiled. It's a rare commodity, with 3 children about. He chuckled, settling into the chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching as the sun painted the distant hills in shades of pink and gold. I received a letter from Mrs. Larson today, Preston said eventually. She's moving to Denver to live with her daughter. I'm glad she'll be with family. She mentioned that her niece Abigail has opened a small dressmaking shop in town. He paused. If you've been missing your trade, I'd understand if you wanted to approach her about work. Willow looked at him, surprised by the hint of apprehension in his voice. Are you suggesting I leave the ranch? No, he said quickly. Not at all. I don't want you to feel obligated to stay if you'd prefer town life. His concern touched her. I'm happy here, Preston. Truly. She hesitated, then added softly, Lily and I both are. Relief washed over his features. I'm glad to hear it. Another comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the rustle of wind through the trees. Willow, Preston said finally, turning to face her. There's something I've been wanting to say for some time now. The seriousness in his tone made her set aside her mending. Yes. When I found you and Lily on the trail that day, I was struck by your courage. Here was a woman who'd lost everything, yet was determined to forge ahead for her child's sake. He took a breath. Over these months, that admiration has only grown. I've come to care for you, deeply, both you and Lily. Willow's heart quickened. Preston, please let me finish, he said gently. I know you've had reason to distrust men, and I respect that. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just wanted you to know that if you ever could consider. That is, if you might someday think of me as more than just Martha's brother or your employer. He trailed off, uncharacteristically unsure. Willow found herself smiling at his awkwardness. This strong, capable man who could command cowboys and handle wild horses with equal ease was stumbling over words like a schoolboy. I already do, she admitted quietly. Think of you as more, that is. Hope lit his eyes. You do. She nodded, her cheeks warming. You've shown me that not all men are like Thomas. You've been kind without expecting anything in return. You've been gentle with Lily, respectful with me. She looked down at her hands, suddenly shy. Yes, I've come to care for you too. Preston reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and covered her hand with his. His palm was calloused from years of ranch work, but his touch was gentle. I won't rush you, he promised. We can take all the time you need. Willow turned her hand to clasp his. Thank you. In the weeks that followed, their relationship evolved with careful tenderness. Preston courted her properly, bringing wildflowers from the hills, taking her on short rides to show her beautiful spots on the ranch, sitting beside her on the porch in the evenings after the children were asleep. Sometimes they talked for hours. Other times they simply enjoyed the companionable silence. Lily blossomed under the attention of both Preston and Martha. The little girl who had once hidden from strangers now ran fearlessly across the ranch, her laughter a common sound. She followed Preston like a shadow when he was around the main house, and he indulged her with endless patience, teaching her about horses and cattle and the rhythms of ranch life. By Christmas, it felt natural when Preston asked permission to court Willow officially. I want to do this right, he told her as they stood beside the Christmas tree he'd brought down from the hills. The children were playing with their new toys, and Martha was in the kitchen preparing the feast. If it's too soon, Willow silenced him with a finger to his lips. It's not too soon. Not when it feels this right. His smile was bright enough to rival the candles on the tree. Then I'll speak to Reverend Miller when he comes for Sunday services. The new year brought heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks. Confined indoors, the household grew closer than ever. Preston taught the children to play checkers, and the evenings were filled with games, stories, and song. Martha played the piano that Preston had hauled all the way from Cheyenne as a birthday gift for her 3 years prior, and sometimes Willow would sing, her clear soprano voice filling the warm room. When spring finally arrived, bringing with it new calves and fresh green grass across the valley, Preston took Willow riding to a hillside overlooking the ranch. Spread below them was the lazy E in all its glory, cattle grazing on verdant pastures, horses running in the corrals, smoke rising from the main house chimney. "It's magnificent," Willow said, taking in the view. "It's only land and buildings without the right people to share it," Preston replied, his voice husky with emotion. He dismounted, then helped her down from her horse. Taking both her hands in his, he looked into her eyes. "Willow Foster, when I found you on that trail last summer, I had no idea you would come to mean everything to me. You've brought joy back into this house, turned it into a true home." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small ring, a simple gold band with a modest diamond. "I'm asking if you would do me the tremendous honor of becoming my wife, of allowing me to be a father to Lily, of building a life together here." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." His kiss was gentle, but filled with promise of devotion, of family, of a future where fear had no place. They married in May, with wildflowers blooming across the hills and the cottonwoods along the creek dressed in new green leaves. The ceremony, held on the ranch with Reverend Miller officiating, was attended by neighbors from miles around. Mrs. Larson made the journey from Denver, and even the sheriff from Silveridge came to wish them well. Lily, resplendent in a new dress sewn by Willow, carried flowers before them. Martha's boys, scrubbed clean and uncomfortable in new suits, stood proudly by Preston. And Martha herself played the wedding march on the piano, transported to the yard for the occasion. As Willow walked toward Preston, she marveled at how far she'd come from that terrified woman on the dusty trail. She had feared every stranger until a cowboy knelt to speak softly to her crying child. Now, that same cowboy waited to make her his wife, to give her daughter a father, to build a future together on the land he loved. When she reached him and placed her hand in his, Preston whispered words meant only for her. "Welcome home, Willow. Forever this time." And as they spoke their vows beneath the endless Wyoming sky, Willow knew she had found not just safety, but the love she'd never dared to hope for. 5 years later, the Lazy E Ranch had expanded to become one of the most successful operations in the territory. Preston and Willow had added twin girls to their family, Rose and Emma, now 3 years old and as spirited as their half-sister Lily, who at 9 had become an accomplished rider and Preston's shadow in ranch operations. On warm summer evenings, the family still gathered on the porch, Preston and Willow watching their children play in the yard, their hands intertwined, their hearts full with the life they'd built together from a chance meeting on a dusty Wyoming trail.